Good morning, everyone. Sorry for coming on just a little bit late this morning. We've had a hectic morning around here today. My son's 13th birthday, so getting him out and giving him a little treat, driving him to school today. So what I have for you today is a card using the Stampin' Up! All-purpose ink. It's the Frost White Shimmer Paint. And so mine's actually quite old. They actually come in different colors. They've got the bright copper, a gold, and another one that's a little bit more sparkly. So this one's the Frost White. It's my favorite just because it gives that kind of snow look. So I just shook it up to get the ink all mixed in there. And I'm using today some thick white cardstock. I find that thick cardstock is just a little bit nicer when you're using it as a card base. Makes a firmer card, and it's also nicer for running through the Big Shot when you want pieces that you're going to be sticking on the top. So I've cut a standard card base at 5.5 by 8.5 and then scored it at 4 1/4. Then I created my layering piece here at 4 by 5 1/4, and then a final piece here that was cut at 3 1/4 by 5. And we're going to actually start with this smaller, thick white cardstock piece, and we're going to run it through the Big Shot. What I'm going to do, I'm going to be off screen for a moment to do this because my Big Shot's on the other side of the room. I'm going to line up these letters from the Large Letters Framelit set, and I'm going to run it through the Big Shot and cut out the word joy. So I'm going to do that first so that I end up with a few little pieces, and then once I've cut those out, I'm actually going to emboss the leftover piece, and I'll save these letters. So I'll be right back. I'm just going to cut these out. While I'm cutting these out, I hope that you guys have all had a great week so far, and getting ready for the weekend. I do still have one spot left in my class this weekend for the Dashing Deer cards that we're making. So if you are interested, you can message me about that. I'm in Port Coquitlam, and the class will be run at my house this weekend. We have 7 ladies lined up for that evening. So I'm using the magnetic plate as I run this through so that once I've lined my letters up, they stay in one spot. I'll just show you here, having used the magnetic plates, my letters stayed in one place as I ran it through, and then I'm just going to pop them out. Okay, so I've got my letters. Now I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to put it into the gently falling embossing plate, or embossing folder. And so I would like to have a little bit less snow at the top and more kind of collecting at the bottom. So that's how I've lined it up. And now I'm going to go run this through my Big Shot. I don't need my magnetic plate for that. It actually doesn't layer very nicely doing that. Alright, so now that I've run this through the Big Shot, I have my joy background created, and it's got all those nice little snowflake dots all over them. So this piece is ready to be adhered to this, and we can glue all of that together. So that's going to be my first step. I know lots of you like to use the snail. You can use whatever adhesives you find easiest. I am actually always most comfortable with this liquid glue because it gives me a little bit of wiggle room because I'm not very good at that lining up piece. And I'm just going to put a small layer between the letters to hold it down in between, a little bit in the tip of that Y. So as you can see, I don't use a lot of glue when I do that. Try and spread it fairly thin so that when I put it on my cardstock, it doesn't like smoosh out the sides or anything. It doesn't take a lot of glue to stick a piece of paper down. So there we go. I've got that adhered. And I'll do just a very thin layer as well on the back. Wipe off the excess. And so as you can see, I also try and stay a little bit away from edges so that when it does kind of spread out, it doesn't spread out of the ends of the paper. So there we go. All right. Now I did get a little bit of glue smooshing out the end there, so once that's a little bit dry, I'll get out my glue eraser and fix that up. All right. So I will put that away for now because our next adhesives that we're going to be using are actually going to be the dimensionals and some mini glue dots. But before we do that, I want to take these letters that I created, and we're actually going to use the shimmer paint. So I'm going to put my card basic to the side. I'm actually going to pull in another piece of scrap paper because I don't want to get my background that I'm working on all covered in paint, because it does take a little bit to dry this paint. So I'm going to give this one more shake, and that's putting a little bit of paint right actually into the lid of my glue. And then I'm going to take one of these little sponge daubers, fits nicely on the finger. I'm going to dip it into the lid. That's going to ensure that I don't get too much ink on here. And then I'm actually just going to sponge these letters. Now you can create a nice effect with this as well if you have a little bit of ink on your sponge dauber as well. And then the shimmer paint and the ink will mix together. But I find then that makes your lid a little bit messy. And you get a little bit of color into your jar. So I don't do that very often. So a little bit more on my lid. I find if I just do like putting the dauber on the top of the jar and tipping it over, that works as well, but I get a little bit too much paint on the sponge dauber, and then you have to really work to spread it out so you don't have like globby spots. So I really like just the small amount of paint that dipping it into the lid lets me get. All right, see if I can get the rest of this done without having to dip again. There's quite a bit in this sponge, so there we go. All right. So I've sponged those letters. So now, as you can, hopefully you can see in the video, they're actually quite shiny. And I could just let these sit and dry, or you can air dry the paint. And this is great because if you want to use this ink on fabric, you can, and then you just use your heat tool to heat set it into the fabric. These paints are actually made by a company who I can never pronounce. Tsukineko is actually the company that makes these paints, and all of their products are for use with fabrics because they are actually an ink, not a paint. So it's quite handy. So I'm just going to plug in my heat tool, and excuse the noise here where I just quickly heat dry these. Alright, so it doesn't take too much to dry those, and now I can bring these back to my main working space and get started creating. So what I'm going to do now is actually take some mini dimensionals and put these onto the backs of my letters so that they kind of pop up on my card. And so I love the mini ones because they fit into little spaces like the end of that J. And then there's no need to cut and stuff like that. So as I finish with each of these, I'm just going to place them into that negative space that I have on my card. Oops. There we go. right, so there's one in place. So you can see there's a slightly more obvious color difference now. This paint, the Frost White, dries with a slight, ever so slight gray tinge to it, and then has that really nice sparkle to it, which is just what I need to make this kind of pop out on my card. Sometimes when you do white on white, as beautiful as it looks, the lettering and stuff can get lost. So this is just creating a little bit of a visual distinction. All right. Now you can leave that center red, or if you wanted to, you could always glue in the white piece in the background. I think I actually really like it with the red, especially since I'm going to do a little bit more accenting on this O with some fancy pieces that I just received from the new Snowflake Showcase. So let's just get these finished. All right. Yeah, I'm very excited for November when you are going to be able to grab yourself the Snowflake Showcase as well. The dies, the stamps, the velvet paper, and the little snowflake trinkets are just absolutely gorgeous. If any of you are really anxious to get your hands on it, you can actually purchase all of the items in a starter kit. And you'll save significantly on the cost of buying all of the product, and earn yourself a 25% discount for the rest of the year. So if you love what you've seen so far of the Snowflake Showcase, give me a shout if you want to get a hold of those a little bit before everybody else. All right, so our next step is we're actually going to use some snowflake trinkets. These are from the Snowflake Showcase that's coming out in November. So there's two different designs of snowflakes here. These two have tangled themselves. There we go. We've got kind of the more angular snowflakes, and then these really pretty kind of softer flower-like snowflakes. And so these are actually fairly thick metal trinkets in here, and then they have a little rhinestone in the center. I'm going to use one of the softer ones today, and I'm going to adhere it with a mini glue dot, if I can find where I put those on the table. I can't see them right now. That's a sign of a messy desk. You guys are lucky you can only see a small portion of my desk. But it looks like a bomb has exploded in here. So, all right, what to do when you can't find your mini glue dots. Oh, here they are. So anytime I'm working with mini glue dots, I try not to actually touch them. I take my trinket or whatever it is I'm adhering, and I put it straight to the paper and peel the glue dot off that way, so that my hands aren't actually touching it. Then if I have to, because this one's a little bit larger than the center of the snowflake, I'll just use my fingers to kind of push it in so that none of the glue dot is going to be seen. And then I'm actually going to stick that on right there. All right. Once that's done, I'm going to actually use some glue dots on this sprig as well. I punched this out using Garden Green and my Sprig Punch. Love this thing. So here we go. I'm just going to put one glue dot on the end of each of these. I'm not going to actually worry too much about gluing these down so they stay flat. I kind of like the look of them when they flop around a little bit. I just want to make sure that they actually stay on the card though. So I'll use one at the base of each. And then to finish that off, to cover up where all those glue dots are, I'm going to use some of my silver baker's twine. And I'm just going to tie a bow here. So I've actually oh, you can't quite see that. So on the bottom of this grid paper that you can get through Stampin' Up, there's actually a ruler. So what I've done is I've actually measured out a 9 by 9 piece, so an 18-inch piece, but I folded it in half because I want to create a double bow using this. And so with that folded in half, I'm then going to make my bunny ears and cross them over, pull that through. And now I'm just going to play with the ends until I get the bows that I want, the size that I need. Just keep playing around. All right, and to me that looks like it's about the right size. So now I'm just going to trim up my ends. Oh, actually, I'm just going to fiddle with this a bit more to get the strings to hang the way I'd like them to. All right. Come on. Sometimes this can be a little finicky. I have lots of friends who say, why do you worry so much about the bow? It's just going to get flattened in the envelope anyways, which is probably true, but I like to start off with the product looking exactly the way I like it. All right, now I'm going to trim up these ends, and this side as well. There we go. And I'm going to use one more mini glue dot. This time though, I am going to actually remove it from the paper first and roll it so that it creates just a little rolled piece to put on the back of this. That way it really is hidden behind the string. I love these glue dots because they are really quite a strong adhesive, and they really keep things in place. So there we go. We've got that bow added on, and we have our finished card. So that's just using the shimmer paint on there. There's so many ways to use the shimmer paint. You can adhere it straight onto stamps. You can use it to create backgrounds, sponge it onto any of your pieces, and you can even mix it with inks. So I hope you enjoyed seeing the shimmer paints in action, and don't forget to like and share this video for a chance to be entered into the prize patrol. I'm actually just going to go online right now and find out who won last week's prize patrol, and I will post that in the comments of this video. So good luck to all of you who shared last week's post, and don't forget to share this one. Have a great day. Bye.